the night of August 5, 1997, bore witness to a tragedy that would forever scar the annals of aviation history. Korean Air Flight 801, a Boeing 747-3B5, en route from Seoul, South Korea, to Guam, crashed into Nimitz Hill just a few miles short of the runway at Guam International Airport. This catastrophic event claimed the lives of 228 souls on board, leaving only 26 survivors to recount the harrowing tale. The crash site, a grim tableau of twisted metal and shattered lives, became a focal point for grief and reflection. The immediate aftermath saw emergency response teams working tirelessly to rescue survivors and recover the remains of those who perished. The scene was chaotic, with rescuers battling against time and the elements to save lives. The survivors, though few, were left with physical and emotional scars that would take years to heal. Their stories of survival, marked by courage and resilience, added a human dimension to the tragedy that statistics alone could never convey. The crash of Flight 801 sent shock waves through the aviation industry, prompting a comprehensive investigation and leading to significant changes in safety protocols and technology worldwide. The industry was forced to confront its vulnerabilities and reassess its priorities. The investigation revealed a complex interplay of errors, both human and technical, culminating in the devastating outcome. It highlighted the delicate balance between human factors and technological reliance in aviation, a balance that, when disrupted, can lead to catastrophic consequences. While the primary cause was attributed to pilot error, contributing factors included crew fatigue, inadequate communication, and limitations of the aircraft's ground proximity warning system. These findings underscored the need for better training, improved technology, and more stringent safety. The tragedy served as a stark reminder of the inherent risks in aviation and the continuous need for vigilance and improvement. The lessons learned from this disaster have since been integrated into training programs, safety protocols, and technological advancements. The crash of Korean Air Flight 801 became a pivotal moment for aviation safety, forcing the industry to confront its vulnerabilities and prioritize passenger safety above all else. It led to the implementation of new safety measures designed to prevent such disasters from recurring. This essay delves into the events leading up to the crash, the investigation's findings, and the subsequent changes implemented to prevent such disasters from recurring. It serves as a testament to the ongoing efforts to make air travel safer for everyone. The legacy of Flight 801 is a sobering reminder of the cost of complacency and the importance of continuous improvement in aviation safety. The changes that followed have undoubtedly saved countless lives, but the memory of those lost on that fateful night remains a poignant reminder of the stakes involved. As we reflect on this tragedy, we honor the memory of those who perished and acknowledge the resilience of the survivors. Their experiences have shaped the future of aviation, ensuring that the lessons learned from this disaster continue to inform and improve safety standards. The story of Korean Air Flight 801 is not just a tale of loss and sorrow, but also one of hope and progress. It reminds us that even in the face of tragedy, we can find ways to move forward, to learn, and to make the skies safer for all who travel them. Korean Air Flight 801, a scheduled passenger flight operating a Boeing 747-3B5, embarked on what seemed like a routine journey from Seoul's Gimpo International Airport to Guam International Airport. The flight was part of a regular service connecting two bustling hubs in East Asia, and the flight carried 237 passengers and a crew of 17, a mix of nationalities embarking on vacations, business trips, and family visits. The atmosphere was filled with the usual pre-flight excitement and anticipation as passengers settled into their seats, stowed their luggage, and prepared for the journey ahead. Among the passengers were 13 children, adding a poignant layer to the tragedy that would unfold. These young travelers, full of energy and curiosity, were looking forward to their destinations, unaware of the impending danger. The flight crew, led by Captain Park Yong-chul, a seasoned pilot with over 8,900 flight hours, appeared well equipped for the Trans-Pacific flight. Alongside him were First Officer Song Kyung-ho and Flight Engineer Nam Sang-jung, both experienced and competent, forming a team that had successfully navigated many flights together. However, unknown to them, a series of challenges awaited as they approached their destination. The journey, which had begun so routinely, was about to take a dramatic and tragic turn. The weather conditions in Guam were less than ideal, with heavy rain and low visibility reported around the airport. The tropical storm had created a thick blanket of clouds, reducing visibility and making navigation increasingly difficult. As Flight 801 neared Guam, the crew prepared for their descent and landing. The tension in the cockpit began to rise as they communicated with air traffic control, receiving updates on the deteriorating weather conditions. The airport's instrument landing system, designed to guide aircraft safely to the runway even in poor visibility, was out of service. This critical piece of equipment, which pilots rely on during challenging weather conditions, was unavailable, adding to the complexity of the situation. This meant the crew would have to rely on a non-precision approach, a more demanding procedure requiring greater pilot input and situational. The pilots had to manually navigate the aircraft using their instruments and visual cues to guide them through the stormy skies. The pressure was immense, and every decision they made was crucial to the safety of everyone on board. Meanwhile, in the air traffic control tower, controllers were closely monitoring the situation, providing the flight crew with as much information as possible. They were aware of the challenges faced by Flight 801 and were doing everything in their power to assist. Inside the cabin, passengers remained largely unaware of the unfolding drama. Some were looking out the windows, trying to catch a glimpse of the stormy weather, while others were reading, sleeping, or chatting with their fellow travelers. The sense of normalcy contrasted sharply with the tension in the cockpit. As the aircraft made its final approach, the crew's focus was razor-sharp. They were determined to land safely despite the adverse conditions. The runway lights, barely visible through the rain, were their guiding beacons in the storm. The moment of truth was at hand. The aircraft descended steadily, and the pilots executed their landing procedures with precision. The wheels touched down on the wet runway, and the plane began to slow down. The passengers, feeling the familiar jolt of landing, believed the journey was over. But the challenges they had faced in the air were now compounded by the need for a safe and swift evacuation. Emergency vehicles were already on standby, ready to assist in any way necessary. As passengers disembarked, the relief on their faces was palpable. They had endured a harrowing experience, but thanks to the skill and determination of the flight crew, they were safe. The routine journey had turned tragic, but it had also highlighted the resilience and bravery of those involved. The weather remained a significant factor, with heavy rain reducing visibility and creating challenging conditions. As Flight 801 descended through the dark, rain-soaked skies, the crew encountered a critical piece of information. The minimum descent altitude for the approach was 564 feet, a crucial safety limit below which the aircraft should not descend without visual contact with the runway. However, due to a combination of miscommunication, fatigue, and possible fixation on other navigational instruments, the crew seemed to have missed this critical altitude call-out. The ground proximity warning system, designed to alert pilots of potential terrain collisions, issued several warnings as the aircraft continued its descent below the safe altitude. Tragically, these warnings were either misinterpreted or disregarded by the crew, who might have become fixated on establishing visual contact with the runway amidst the deteriorating weather conditions. Section 4. Fatal Errors. A cascade of mistakes. The final moments of Flight 801 were marked by a series of critical errors. These errors, unfortunately, compounded upon each other, creating a cascade of mistakes that ultimately led to the tragic accident. The crew's misinterpretation of the minimum descent altitude was one of the first critical errors. This misinterpretation set the stage for the subsequent mistakes that followed. Coupled with their possible fixation on other cockpit instruments, the crew's attention was diverted from crucial altitude readings. This fixation is a common issue in high-stress situations, where pilots may become overly focused on certain tasks while neglecting others. This led them to continue their descent below the safe altitude, a critical error that brought them dangerously close to the terrain below. The descent below the minimum safe altitude was a pivotal moment in the chain of events. The ground proximity warning system warnings, designed to alert the crew to imminent danger, were triggered. These warnings are meant to be unmistakable and urgent, prompting immediate correction. Intended to jolt the crew into taking corrective measures, the warnings should have been a clear signal to abort the descent. However, in the heat of the moment, the crew's response was not as swift or decisive as it needed to be. The warnings seemed to have gone unheeded or misinterpreted. This misinterpretation or disregard of the warnings was a critical failure in the chain of events. Contributing to the tragic outcome was the inoperative instrument landing system at Guam Airport. The lack of this crucial navigational aid added another layer of complexity to the already challenging approach. While a non-precision approach is a standard procedure, it requires a higher level of skill and situational awareness from the crew. The absence of ILS guidance meant that the pilots had to rely more heavily on their instruments and judgment. The lack of ILS guidance placed greater demands on the crew's skills and situational awareness, especially given the challenging weather conditions. Poor visibility and adverse weather further complicated the approach, increasing the difficulty of the task at hand. The stormy weather, combined with the nighttime approach, created a perfect storm of challenges that tested the crew's abilities to their limits. The combination of these factors, including the inoperative ILS, poor weather, and the crew's fixation on certain instruments, created a high stressful environment. The pilots were under immense pressure to manage multiple tasks simultaneously. Coupled with the inherent pressures of a nighttime approach, the situation became even more challenging. Nighttime operations are inherently more difficult due to reduced visibility and increased reliance on instruments, creating a high-stress environment for the pilots. The stress and pressure of the situation likely contributed to the crew's impaired decision-making and response times. The investigation would later reveal that crew fatigue might have also played a role in. Fatigue is a well-known factor that can significantly impair cognitive function and decision-making abilities. The pilots had been on duty for an extended period, which likely contributed to their fatigue. Long duty hours and insufficient rest can severely impact a pilot's performance, and their decision-making abilities might have been impaired due to fatigue. Fatigue can lead to slower reaction times, decreased attention, and impaired judgment, all of which are critical in high-stakes situations. This highlighted the critical need for better fatigue management strategies within the aviation industry. Implementing effective fatigue management programs can help ensure that pilots are well-rested and capable of performing at their best, ultimately enhancing aviation safety. The crash of Flight 801 prompted a thorough investigation by the National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB. The investigation team, aided by experts from various fields, meticulously analyzed the wreckage, recovered the flight data recorder and cockpit voice recorder, and interviewed witnesses and personnel involved. The NTSB investigation revealed a complex interplay of factors that contributed to the crash. The primary cause was attributed to pilot error, specifically the captain's failure to maintain situational awareness and adhere to safe altitude limits during the non-precision approach. The crew's misinterpretation of the minimum descent altitude and their disregard for the ground proximity warning system warnings proved fatal. However, the investigation went beyond simply blaming the pilots. The NTSB identified several contributing factors, including the inoperative instrument landing system at Guam Airport, which forced the crew to rely on a more demanding approach procedure. The investigation also highlighted the role of crew fatigue, inadequate communication between the crew members, and limitations of the then existing ground proximity warning system